Yeah, not gonna lie, gang. I think I'm doomed. I mean, Natlan looks like it's my hard counter. I mean, look at these. Look at these names we got in the most recent story. Sakak, Yampangqui, Arawapala, NASCAR. And given I got thrown into the abyss for the way I said this guy's name, someday when they return, their true ordeal shall begin. Jababalink, one entombed with the primal fire, which I now know is Shibalanke, so I mean, slowly but surely we're making improvements. It's weird though, just because my name is also tricky, although my name isn't like hard to say, it's just, I don't know, deceptive practices. It looks like DeWitt's, but it's Dawit. Now my last name on the other hand looks like part of a fucking incantation for summoning a demon. So I feel, you know, right at home with the Yankampanquis of the worlds in Natlan. I can't wait for more of that shit, man. That should be exciting. But for now, the story we got will have to do. And for those confused, there was indeed some Natlan lore drop this patch by way of the unfinished Reverie artifact set. There wasn't anything like crazy in there, but there was again a rather sad story from Natlan. I mean, god damn it, yo, it's a sad story we got. Or maybe I'm just a bitch, a softie. No, I'm hard, nigga. You hard, nigga. Yeah, I'm hard. Regardless, we did learn a bit more about Natlan culture, and interestingly, there's even some Conria references in there, and to the surprise of no one, there is a war. You know how they are. But the oddest thing, no doubt, is that despite calling Natlan a nation of dragons, in this story, dragons don't live with humans, but rather, they're just tools to be used by them, and if you show compassion to one, you can even be put to death for it. That is brilliant! Not only are they killing the dragons, actually this sounds a lot like The 6 tribes of Natlan are once again brought up, so it seems like that's just going to be a mainstay moving forward. And although I might be wrong, it seems like this story was set during Rumeria. I don't know, I'll explain later why. But for now, let's summarize the story. I prep mentally for this one, fellers. If you're caught off guard, it could end up being a real tearjerker. Ready? Here we go. The story starts some time ago, with the king standing before the throne. Interestingly, the king is only said to be half man, but we never learn what the other half is. The king is supposedly a tyrant, and his kingdom is in steep decline. It's then our protagonist emerges, a red-eyed youth who had recently just returned from the kingdom where water flowed as rays of light to the hilly heights of the ineffable city. We learn he came to these lands looking for a team after heeding the words of a blind old lady who told the kid, as radiant flowers still blossom amongst the clinging vines of distant marsh, go seek, for here is the land of death piled high with the skulls of behemoths. Go seek those, the truly righteous, who are willing to stand in the cold, cruel night, to throw themselves onto the fire. And remember, never betray their passion, their hatred, their greed, and their ambition. Do not break faith with the eyes of those still willing to gaze upon the burning flames. And find the righteous our scarlet-eyed friend would. The first to join would be a young girl holding a dull feather named Sakuk, who was said to excel at finding information. Then a pair of hero twins would join, consisting of elder twin Alawapa, whose teeth were said to be sharper than a blade, and younger twin Moskar, whose back was said to bear the lashes of a tyrant. The penultimate member to join the team would be Yankampanqui, a silent warrior who joined these foe avengers after hearing of the scarlet-eyed youth freeing some Saurians. You see, Yankampanqui wants Saurians to live in harmony with humans, as opposed to the dynamic that exists right now, which is literally just, "What the fuck told you to stop moving, you bitch-ass Saurian?" Upon looking back at this team of superstars, the scarlet-eyed youth explained to the team, they're great, but they need someone who really knows the city, to which Yankampanqui suggested they find a legendary craftsman. No one knew where this craftsman was, so Sakuk, who loved her new friend group dearly, took it upon herself to find him personally. Tried as she might, this craftsman was nowhere to be found, however, so Sakuk decided to pull out a decorative feather, stare into a dim light, and think of her father. It was then a fucking drunkard who was half awake on the ground beside her began to recount the origins of the patterns on her feather. Yeah, you know, I often enter deep contemplative states right beside a fucking drunk person on the ground. That's the best spot to do it, man. Sakuk was a bit taken aback about how such a train wreck of a person could have made something as beautiful as her feather, but even more so, noticed something odd about the man. He was donned in a cowl and a hat that were covering up scars and severe burns from a fire. that seemingly ruined half of his face. Lucky for him, Sakuk does not discriminate, so never minding the fact that he looks like fucking Two-Face, she proceeds to hand him the feather, and upon receiving it, the craftsman begins to tell her stories of his life, one of which involved the time he was tasked with making something for one respected by all. Sakuk immediately recognized the story and told him that person was her father, and while yes, at one point he was respected by all, he'd later be heavily condemned for protecting the tribe's Saurians, and as a result, would die for it. The craftsman immediately stated he would help her no matter what the issue, and even sensed that Sakuk had fallen in love with someone. I wonder who that could be. When the two join the group again, the craftsman begins to tell the group the origins of his burned body. Long ago, the king gathered as many artisans and craftsmen as he could for the purpose of leading an excavation underground, where it said they found, quote, gargantuan beastly constructs whose wings once caught the winds as great banners might, all to fulfill his ambitions, but the king's erratic behavior had long been common knowledge, and so, on the day he finally probed the depths of the secrets, he lit a great fire intending to burn it all and all who knew of it, burying all together with the ruins behind the stone gates. The craftsman proceeds to continue telling all in attendance of the giant machines he saw, although he never mentioned how the fuck he lived. I guess he just sort of booked it when the king lost full and decided to just torch everything. No one takes the craftsman's story seriously, believing the things he saw to be impossible, except for Sakuk, who seems intrigued with his story. Regardless, he stops there, but interestingly, we learn he saw more in the fire he didn't tell the kids. In truth, he had seen far more in those flames that had nearly rendered his life as ash, such as flowing golden patterns, another path to escape from the ruins, as well as the manifold iron rules that had established the empire that stretched far and wide, but the latter might be too far beyond the ken of the youths. He figured he'd just tell them all this after they've overthrown the king. Later on, we learn of these sundials recovered by researchers in the modern day that are all weird in that they have the same exact engravings on them. However, in the current time of our story, these engravings were interpreted differently by the people of Natlan, but regardless of what they believed, our group of heroes would pull through and fulfill their destinies. Those who came from the canyons believed it was a time for those who had broken with their faith to light the obsidian pillars once more. That day, the one acting on the behalf of the leaders of the tribes, the daughter of the mind Sakuk, sent the wandering spirits back to the realm of the night. Those who came from the hanging trees believed it was a time for those who had forsaken their contract to sign it once more with the Saurians of the 6 tribes. That day, the great hero trusted by all warriors, the taciturn Yankampankwi, used his sword to shatter the shackles binding the Saurian's neck. Those who came from the spring source believed it was a time for those who had forgotten their past to listen anew to the echoes of the waves. That day, the elder of the twin heroes, the eloquent Arapalawa, rekindled the desire of all for past glories. Those who came from the fertile lands believed it was a time for the oppressed to rise from the earth once more. On that day, the younger of the twin heroes, the champion, Waskar, stood first against the torrents of darkness. Those who came from the mountain peaks believed it was a time for those who had been caged to return to freedom's nest once more. That day, the scarlet-eyed hero summoned the gods' fiery wrath, burnt the corroded city to ash, and restored the tribe to its own. Fast forward to some point in the future, we hear the thoughts of a kid who reveals to the reader that in the end the group was successful in overthrowing the king. However, the kid thinks back to the unofficial stories of the event, which mention that an unnamed craftsman was rumored to have played a big part in the rebellion. That craftsman never revealed who he was, and to this day it's a complete mystery. His only lasting legacy is seemingly some marked sundials. We fast forward a lot of years later to Sakuk, who is now an elderly woman. She pulls a Rose from Titanic and just recalls a sad story about the fate of the craftsman. Someone once granted her desire, agreeing to remake the long-dulled feather accessories once the ancient kingdom had fallen. And so she too promised that person who had long earned her respect that when the time came, she would give them a turquoise crown in return. It was after witnessing the crooked corpse agonizingly hunched beneath the black beast's butcher blade that she understood. The crown she had forged and adorned with her own 2 hands would wait alone for its master, who would never attend the coronation. The old bastard died in battle, man. You hate to see it. We learn as an old lady, Sakuk, just really likes old jewelry that can no longer be made by the dog shit craftsmen of today, Sakuk is the only remaining person still standing from the original group, with the others having met their own ends in battle. Quote, the scarlet-eyed youth she had loved had returned to the sacred flames after completing his calling, leaving nothing but a warm afterglow, and when the silent hero fell into the ruler's flames, the new world reflected in his remaining eye was already his greatest reward. One of the hero twins was once an incorrigible chatterbox, yet upon witnessing his brother die at the hands of their adversary, his tormented wails racked his throat's hoarse. In the modern day, Sakuk had become so overprotective of the craftsman, she bought all manner of works signed in his name, even the fake ones, to keep his name a secret, and when she bought every last one, she packed them all up, placed a turquoise crown she promised him under a tree, and wandered off into the wilderness never to be seen again. When the people caught wind of her disappearance, they swore to one another that they will follow in her lead and keep the name of the craftsman a secret from history. Ah, what a touching story. All of them died but one. Makes you cry like a bitch, doesn't it?